You're listening to Procurement 6, the weekly podcast from the team at Art of Procurement that summarizes this week in procurement in just 6 short segments.
Hi there, I'm Philip Heitzen, and today is Friday, February 17th, 2023.
6.
On February 27th through March the 1st, my colleague Helen McKenzie and I were facilitating and appearing in a number of sessions at Procurement Indirect West in San Diego. Now, this week, in one of my prep sessions, I spoke with a CPO about business resiliency and a metric that his company uses to demonstrate value beyond savings. This metric is revenue protection. How much revenue was protected by risk mitigation efforts, which may include accepting price increases in return for secured supply. This is a metric that the entire organization could understand and buy into, and also connected procurement performance directly with revenue. So my tip of the week is to consider how you could develop a revenue protection KPI in your business to demonstrate in one more way the value that your team provides. And if you're coming to Procurement Indirect West, check out the session I'll be facilitating on supply chain resiliency, where I'm sure we're going to go into this topic in a lot more detail.
5.
In this week's episode of the podcast, we shared the audio from a recent AOP Live session featuring Jules Zapade and Colin Glazier from Zip. We talked about some of their predictions for 2023, but one that caught my attention was the impact that no-code technology could potentially have on the procurement experience.
When you think about any sort of tool or any sort of product that's going to help, from a software perspective, your team, one of the biggest concerns we hear from customers and is also top of mind for a procurement leader is, okay, great, I can get this tool, I can get it stood up, but what's my overhead in terms of maintaining this thing? And because procurement processes are not static. Almost more than any other process inside of the company, your procurement process is constantly be changing as you grow, as you evolve, as you sort of mature. So you need something that can stay real time with you. And if you're thinking of most older platforms, you're basically baking in like maybe a half a head count of IT resources to just help you keep things up and running. And if you want to make a change, that change is going to take probably upwards of a week to build, to test, and then to deploy live. No-code tools means that someone that's as untechnical as myself can go into the back end and just drag and drop things, and the logic is not coded. So you don't need to be a coder. You don't need to have any sort of software skills. All you need to do is understand what you want to change and make a change, and it's you can push it live immediately. So that's kind of at a layman's term what no code really means to us and why it's so critical for procurement tools. Because procurement, we're expected to do more with less. And so when you come with, hey, we're going to save some money, or this tool is going to make our team more effective, or we're going to improve the process, this much percent. If you've come with also an equivalent IT resource request, you're probably going to get told no. And that's really the game changer for no code tools.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to sort of add to that too is that without no code, right, and some of the legacy sort of software and systems that are out there, so much blood, sweat, and tears over so long goes into the initial implementation, and then the day that something goes live, so to speak, is the day that you start to see a divergence between like reality and just business process, and businesses mature and change obviously every year, and like systems, and if you have so much friction to change anything, whether it be a field or some logic or a condition or whatever in the workflow, you see so much like divergence just compounds, and then what happens is then you sort of get back into the situation of, well, all right, this process isn't working here. And then procurement becomes the shepherd, so to speak, of carrying the baggage of this divergence, and now you're back to sort of where you were.
Yeah.
And so the ability to have no code allows you to sort of take a much more iterative approach, an agile approach to making sure that the business isn't like the software and the systems are really mapped to reality, right? Especially when we look at the macro changes and how much just volatility there is in the world. And so no code is just, it's not like, I don't view it as it's not like a one step improvement. It's actually like a multi-step improvement and sort of, of magnitude change.
If you are interested in more insights from this event, you can listen to the full conversation on this week's podcast, watch the event on demand on our site, or read a list of 6 silver linings I called out in a blog post this week on artofprocurement.com.
4.
In another piece of AOP written content shared this week, my partner Kelly Barner wrote about the recent news coverage of Chinese spy balloons floating over the United States and how they may be landing in procurement's backyard. News broke on February the 10th that 6 Chinese-owned companies have been added to the Commerce Department's blacklist. 5 of them don't have any kind of footprint outside of China, but one of them does. China Electronics Technology Group Corporation, or CETC, is the 3rd largest electronics and IT company in China, ranking behind Huawei and Lenovo. They manufacture electronic parts and systems for radars, missiles, key components for navigation satellite systems, semiconductors, antennas for wireless infrastructure, and equipment for autonomous driving technology. Now, one of procurement's most important responsibilities is knowing which suppliers the company does business with. In most cases, this information allows procurement to answer straightforward business questions, but sometimes there's far more at stake. Having the right watch lists in place and keeping them up to date is a strategic and high visibility procurement responsibility. Read Revisiting the Importance of Supplier Watch Lists on Art of Procurement for more.
This is Procurement 6 from Art of Procurement. To get notified every time an episode is published, go to artofprocurement.com/subscribe. 3.
We hosted Art of Procurement Digital Outcomes this week, a 2-day virtual event focused on all things digital. We heard about pilot programs, user experience, cybersecurity, reframing failure, and performance management. Now, despite the focus of the event being digital, every session included some aspect of human nature or change management as well. If you registered before the event, you can now watch all 8 sessions on demand at your convenience. We'll then reopen registration for Watch Again Access in March. If you didn't register and won't want to wait that long, on Monday, February 27th, Kelly Barnett and I will be discussing our key takeaways on the pod, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. We'll also publish a post-event white paper as well, so keep your eyes out for that.
2.
In other content, Conrad Klintz, Director of Cybersecurity and Incident Response at KPMG Singapore, recently shared a guide for procurement specialists on how to buy consulting services, or you always get what you pay for, on LinkedIn. He has some thoughts about how procurement can change the outcome and the value created in consulting sourcing projects by changing the way we approach the category from the start. Some of his best advice involves setting scope, including the why for the engagement, understanding the cost model and profit margin needs of a successful professional services business, and some shady tactics to be on the lookout for during and after negotiation. I'll link to the full article in the show notes, so check it out if consulting services is one of your categories, or if you have a consulting sourcing project coming up.
1.
Before I let you go, we have an AOP live session coming up on February 28th with Yatin Anand, Principal and Procurement Leader at KPMG, and Michael Van Keulen, or MVK, Chief Procurement Officer at Cooper. They will address how procurement can increase overall business resilience for the sake of short-term agility and long-term growth. Now, speaking of short-term issues, we also recently ran a poll to find out what you think the most disruptive short-term issue is. You'll have to join us live to see the full results, but I can tell you that supplier availability took top spot with 40%. Now, to learn how to overcome this and other short-term challenges so you can support your company's long-term growth, register to join us on the 28th at artofprocurement.com/calendar.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday at 6 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you've enjoyed this pod, help us grow and tell your peers to search for Procurement 6 wherever they get their podcasts.